A win's a win, right? Well, yikes. That was certainly something for the Minnesota Wild today as they beat the Chicago Blackhawks by a score of 3-2. Weird officiating in this game, to say the least, but plenty to discuss here in today's Locked On Wild postcast. Let's get to the particulars.
You are Locked On Wild Postcast, part of Locked On Minnesota on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Minnesota Wild come away with a 3-2 win over the Chicago Blackhawks, and a game that I think was certainly closer than it should have been. But you know, at the end of the day, it's the same story for this Minnesota Wild team that we just see them continue to find ways to kind of rise above whatever is going on. And ideally, you'd like to be able to put a team away like Chicago, but with a game coming up tomorrow, it was a game in which you didn't see as much effort put in as you typically would have. Not a ton of blocked shots, but enough to rally past Chicago and enough to pick up 2 points against the Blackhawks at home. Now, it did start with a 2-0 deficit, which was not great, but you rally to tie and take the lead in pretty quick fashion in the second. And if not for probably the worst call I've seen all season, Marcus Foligno gets the empty netter to make it 4-2, and it's game over. I don't know what that linesman saw or thought he saw or what the deal was. Marcus Foligno has some thoughts, which we'll talk about here in a second. But all in all, the Wild got another win. They've got 34 points now on the season, and definitely a Black Friday game. And I've heard that this has been a little bit of a thing. So I'm not gonna read too much into certain aspects of it. The Wild defended well in this game. They just throttled Chicago in the faceoff circle. They held them to 22 total shots on goal, and maybe one goal that Marc-Andre Fleury really wished he could have back, but otherwise he was pretty much just below what he needed to be. His expected goals against was 1.98, and he gave up 2 goals. So he was pretty much right at where he needed to be in this game. And so he picks up his 5th win. Goals to Marco Rossi, and Jared Spurgeon gets 2 on his birthday weekend. And they were pretty weird goals against Peter Mrazek, which is fine considering that the Wild got goalied the last time they played Chicago. That's fine by me. It's fine by me to have the weird goals happen to the other team and to be able to come away with a win. But let's get to some of your thoughts for today's game. Dougie starts it right off the bat. Weird officiating, more like a clown show. It really has been just very bizarre calls in a lot of these games. And the call that I'm referencing in particular was the icing at the end of the game, in which Marcus Foligno got to the puck first, and the officials still blew the play dead for an icing. Foligno should have had the empty net goal, but the officials blew the whistle, and Foligno was not happy. Just not good. But until they do something about it, like Will suggests, it's not going to change. And it's not just hockey. It's every sport. Every sport has just preposterous levels of officiating at various points. Now, don't get me wrong. Everybody that listens to this show knows that I typically don't I typically don't throw shade on the officials unless it's blatantly obvious and hideously bad. That last call was gross. If you're wondering why I'm talking weird, by the way, I just mauled the left side of my tongue eating Thanksgiving food yesterday, and so it is. It's definitely noticeable when I try to talk, but I guess that's just at this point in the hockey season, everybody's dealing with something, which we've seen from Jonas Brodin, from Jakub Lauko, Marat Huznadinov actually back in the lineup today, but some injuries starting to mount for this Minnesota Wild team, but they have been able to play their way through them, at least so far. Amanda joining us today. I'm really starting to wonder more about our shots on goal in the first period this season, minus the Jets game. It's the slow starts have been more prevalent lately for this Minnesota Wild team. It's something that we have been so used to, just seeing the team get off to early starts and get the early goal and be able to carry their style of play all the way through and really comfortably win more often than they don't. And I think that just is an indicator that that's not and was never going to be sustainable. You can look at the quality of the teams that are seemingly playing much better against Chicago. But let's keep in mind too. Let's factor this into the equation too. Chicago just throttled the Dallas Stars in their most recent game. So nobody is immune from struggles. I think we're just seeing kind of a course correction for the Wilds in that they weren't going to get the lead in every game. The big thing I think to take away is just that they continue to battle through it and be able to handle the adversity and be able to come away with the wins. And this, I'm starting to notice a pattern here too. And Amanda is absolutely right. Is the offense has lacked a lot of creative playmaking, it seems, without Matt Zuccarello in it. And that extends to the power play. That extends to the normal 5-on-5 offense. Things have looked very stagnant lately. And I think that has a large portion. I think there's a large part to do with Zuccarello being out of the lineup. Haven't seen any updates on his status in a while, but I think the expectation was that he would be back sometime in December. So I guess we'll see. And hopefully he's back sooner than later, because the Wild could certainly use him in the lineup. Dougie pointing out some struggles from the last year's rookie phenom, Connor Bedard. He did have an assist in this game and 4 shots on goal, but he was just 2 of 6 in the faceoff circle. And for Bedard, he finally broke that long goal drought that he had by when they Blackhawks beat the Stars 6-2. But beyond that, he had not scored a goal in quite some time. And his overall numbers on the season, 4 goals and 12 assists, it's not great. But as far as what is specifically going wrong for Bedard, I'm going to be doing another episode with Jack from Locked On Blackhawks after we finish here to get a little more intel as to why his numbers are just so far in his sophomore season. Sophomore slump could be, but I think the league has kind of figured out how to defend him better, and now it's on Bedard to figure out how to be better than the defense that the league is throwing at him. Appreciated, AJ. It has been a whirlwind last 3 weeks. First moving and packing and moving and unpacking, and now getting used to a much more early morning oriented schedule. Never used to be somebody that got up at 5 a.m., but we're making it work. It just takes a little bit of adjustment to be able to get everything in place, but we're certainly getting back to where we need to be. We've got listeners from Sweden. Thanks for tuning in. Appreciate having you as part of the Locked On Wild community, joining us for today's game. We appreciate having you on. And we've got fans from the UK as well. Great fight back. Chicago looked good. Power play was lackluster, but loved the strong play from gained pucks in the defensive zone. Captain coming up big in this one. Well said, Benjamin. That's a great summary of what we saw in the game. It's just that continued response, that continued battle back level, and getting some good saves from a 40-year-old now goalie in Marc-Andre Fleury. And it's the same formula we've seen pretty much all season from the Minnesota Wild is good defense, strong goaltending, and being opportunistic in scoring to be able to get those goals. The first goal that the Wild scored was a nifty play to spring Marco Rossi. I believe that was the Rossi goal first. Yes, it was. And then Jared Spurgeon had the one that went off of Mrazek and a defender that was just a mess. And then the second one, the one that went off of Mrazek's glove. Sometimes it's better to have puck luck on your side than it is to have it against. So good opportunistic offense by the Wild today. We'll talk about the power play because that needs major work. There are a few different things that are going wrong with that unit, to say the least. But you gotta just have faith that it will correct. Hopefully. Well, I don't think it's going to be this bad the whole season. We'll see. From Amanda Russo, Fleury said the 20-plus kids at Jared and Danny Spurgeon's Thanksgiving feast for the Wild sang him a happy birthday. That's another little wrinkle to this team that I think was sorely missing last year. And I think it was more so just because everything went wrong so quickly, is the camaraderie of this group. And it's another strong locker room, but it's one thing to have a strong locker room and not have the results to back it up. It's another entirely to have a strong locker room on a strong team. And that's much more enjoyable when you have a tight-knit group that believes that they are capable of winning games and is also winning games. So that's been a nice little wrinkle to the success for this team so far, as opposed to where they were at last year. I want to dive into this one from Bubba Bram. The Minnesota Wild, again, sorry, if it sounds like I'm talking funny, it is because I clamped down on my tongue eating the Thanksgiving feast yesterday, and you probably can't see it, but there's a nice sized welt on it. Like, I'm talking vice grip. So been trying to navigate through that here for the better part of the last day. But anyway, the Minnesota Wild should extend Marco Rossi, trading him for picks or some sort of rental player to open up space for Yurov, who hasn't touched North American ice. Could be a terrible move for the Wild. I agree. I think at this point, I don't know what else he's supposed to do to put himself in position to be a key piece of what this team's trying to do. He scored his 7th goal of the season. So he's got 18 points in 23 games. And if you look at the statistics for this Minnesota Wild team, there aren't a lot of players that are at that same level or above. 18 points is now, well, it was and now still is. 18 points is third on the team. 7 goals is third on the team. For a guy that's playing 16 and a half minutes per night on the ice, he's winning faceoffs, he's playing physical. I don't know what else you need to do to be like firmly in the mix, as opposed to being somebody that continues to be part of trade discussions. Denny wants him locked in, locked up, and locked down. And he's not wrong. He's absolutely correct. Like, just give him the long term. Another great point by Dougie here. Scouts are still saying Yurov will be better as a wing than a center. So I think, and look, here's the other part of this too. Versatility. Versatility is not a bad thing. Having guys that can play multiple positions, having centers that can play wing, having wings that can play center is not a bad problem to have. Prioritize young talent, add in veteran presence as you need it. Alex and I are going to talk more about the David Jiricek rumblings from Columbus on Monday. I don't really get it. It seems like putting more icing on a cake, whereas you need some more. Feels like you just need to prioritize offensive pieces for a little bit. But that's just me. AJ, great to see another UK fan in here. Although, if argue with you being the biggest, I think the connection happened because we had the 7-game trip right off the bat. Yeah, that's a good point. John Hines talked about that when the season started. Was that allowed the team to come together pretty quickly. A 7-game road trip is pretty rare, and it seems like they certainly did a good job of that. You got to slow down when you're eating. Bubba Ram's right though. You can't stop. You can't slow down with Thanksgiving food, especially Thanksgiving food that was that good. That was good enough that I got leftovers of the turkey and the ham, and so I went to the grocery store and bought my own Thanksgiving sides to put together to add into it. It was delicious. It is delicious. I'm going to eat more of it tonight. Thanksgiving food is probably near the top of the list in terms of holiday food to enjoy. It's top level. I'm just going to keep eating it all weekend. Jiricek is a malcontent. He wants to be traded because he feels like he shouldn't have to play in the AHL. Well, if that's the case, then I'm even less enthused about it than I previously was. Let's just look a little bit. But again, Alex and I are going to talk about this for Monday's show. Is just adding in just another defensive piece. It feels like we have plenty of them. I can't even find him. Here he is. Okay, David Jiricek. He's 6'3", 209, 21 years old. Those are positives. But as far as his numbers go, he played in 43 games last year. He had 10 points, 22 penalty minutes. This year he's played in 6 games with 1 assist and 4 penalty minutes. I don't know what to make of Jiricek per se. I'm going to save that mostly for Alex and I, but I'm just of the belief, and Russo I think tweeted something exactly along these lines. If it's going to cost Rossi, it's not worth it. If you are going to put yourself in a position to have to make a trade for a guy like that, you better get yourself something that's going to put you completely over the top. Juracek doesn't do that. So and if you're worried about not having enough young defensemen, Brock Faber, Zeev Buium, Damon Hunt, that's plenty. With Middleton playing, like with the level that Middleton is playing at right now, I don't have any problems with him. Like I slot him in for next year perfectly fine. Because even like he's playing at such a high level right now, even if he takes a slight step down, even if he's 85% of what he's doing right now, he is perfectly fine as a top pairing defenseman with Faber. Or you put him back with Spurgeon. Maybe what you could do if you really want to go Faber and Buium next year, you could go back to Spurgeon Middleton and then go Brodin with Chisholm, whoever else. And then you've got very evenly distributed 3 pairs of defense that you feel like you can play pretty evenly to where you don't have to hide a pairing. You can just play all 3 of them. Be a nice option to have. But I just I don't know. Juracek just he doesn't do much for me, at least at this point. But we'll see what Alex has to say. One thing Hoptics has been noticing was the amount of interference away from the puck, like setting picks and literally tying people up while they are waiting for a pass. Winnipeg did it constantly. They have been for years. Chicago did it all game 2. Teams have been really trying to clog things for the Minnesota Wild, both away from the puck and especially on the power play too. I'm not going to dive too much into this because that is going to be one of the topics for Sunday night's show with Denny. Is going to be the power play. So I don't want to dive into it too much, but there's some stuff that Chicago was doing, as was pointed out in the broadcast, that is making life difficult for that group. But it seems like teams are trying to more physically attack the Minnesota Wild offensively over these last few games, as opposed to what they were doing in the first part of the season. But also, let's consider this too. With the Wild getting behind in more games than they did at the start of the season, teams have the opportunity to get themselves set up in the system that they want to run, as opposed to having to constantly play from behind like they did early in the season. It's all just kind of a course correction. And the key thing is that the Wild early in the season, they were getting the early lead and they were winning those games. Now they're having to battle back from behind, and they're still on a pretty darn good pace from a points perspective. They're on a 72% points percentage so far this season, which is just bonkers. And is a large part of the reason that they are in the playoffs as of Thanksgiving. We all know what that means, is if you're in the playoffs by Thanksgiving, there is a high likelihood that you will be in the playoffs by the end of the season. There's a lot that can change between now and the end of the season, but we saw how hard it was to try to crawl out of that hole at the beginning of the season last year, as opposed to simply being in the playoffs this time around, at least right now. So it's just nice. It's just way better than having games be miserable all the time and having to try to figure out who to yell about next. It's just nice to have key things to point to for particular games for wins. Urban's got a counterpoint or a blip down, Do you want Rossi? Can he be an elite goal scorer, or do you want an elite goal scorer like Besser or somebody else? We'll see if that's the toss up. It all depends. If you're getting Besser for the rest of this season, then if you're just getting Besser for the rest of this year, then I'm a no on Rossi. If Rossi can't be an elite goal scorer or elite playmaker, he is replaceable by the depth in the system. Yeah, that's not wrong. Urban is right there. And so that's what Bill Guerin is taking a long, hard look at right now is, will Marco Rossi become one of those guys? Or, what's going to end up happening? Let's talk about Jonas Brodin, because Will is looking for some elaboration some elaboration. Yeah, that's the right one. Others have as well. This from Michael Russo. A couple of injury updates today. The Wild need to get more information on Jonas Brodin's upper body injury, so sounds like they will be careful with him. Jakub Lauko's injury doesn't sound serious, but needs to heal, so sounds like he'll be out for a bit. No update on when Matt Zuccarello can practice. Somebody responded, any update on whether Mats will ever speak to Faber again after the friendly fire shot? That's funny. Yeah, where are the Spurgeon haters now? Two goals from the captain. Playing pretty darn good. Middleton is top 10 shutdown D this year. Looks legitimately good, and not just because he's playing with Faber. Yeah, he is having a fantastic season. Middleton is this year, and he's blocking shots. Like, let's just I just want to look at his block numbers, because I feel like they are substantially higher than previous seasons. So he has 55 blocks in 22 games. I'm just going to project this out because I love to use the calendar on my phone, or the calculator. So 12 points in 22 games is 545. So he's on pace for 44 points, which would by far be a career high. 181. Oops. He's on pace for 14 goals, which would by far be a career high. He's on pace for 205 blocks, which would be a career high. You sensing a pattern here. 29 hits in 22 games, 1.32. He's on pace for 108 hits, which is a bit of a dip, but I think that's due to him actually playing defense more than just lining people up and trying to hit them. He's having a fantastic season across the board. And he was one of the guys I think that needed to have a step up after last year, but there were certainly players in front of him in line. But he has done a ton to help this Wild defense be one of the, if not the best in the entire NHL. Yeah, Leonard is right here. Middleton has taken a step forward since his Sharks days. It's just been steadily getting better and better. And this year is by far his best. By far his best. Can you compare what Ek did in his age? Ooh, this is a great question by Dougie. Very, very good call. Let me line that up right now. Just to see, because we all know it did take Joel Eriksson Ek a little time to get himself going as a two-way center. He was always pretty good defensively. It just took the offense a while to come about. So, age 23 season. 7 goals, 18 points in 22 games so far. Joel Eriksson Ek, in his age 23 season, he had 8 goals, 21 assists, and 29 points in 62 games. His face-off percentage was 46.2%. He was playing about 15 minutes, 43 seconds per night on the ice. Just about 100 hits, 43 blocks. Only had 102 shots on goal. So Rossi right now is on pace for his age 23 season for so we'll just take it before today's game. So 82 games, 6 goals in 22 games is 0.27%. So he's on pace for 22 goals. So that would shatter what Joel Eriksson Ek did as a 23-year-old. 17 points divided by 22 games is 0.77. 63 points. So he's on pace for 20-plus goals, 60-plus points. His face-off percentage is at 49%. He already has 39 shots on goal. 39 shots on goal in 22 games. I'm going to bite that thing every time I open my mouth. 82 games times 1.77 shots on goal per game. That's 145. So that shatters what Joel Eriksson Ek did in his age 23 season. So he's ahead of where Joel Eriksson Ek was at the age of 23. And unless you're magically finding a top, like a bona fide number one center, which they don't grow on trees, it just seems like a poor choice to move a guy like that. But I've already talked about it more than I wanted to. And so I think I'm going to, for the most part, just retire the Rossi trade talk until it either doesn't happen or it happens. Because we can lay out these numbers time and time again. They're very impressive. And for me, I would just rather hang on to a guy like that, especially somebody who embodies the sort of work ethic that you're looking for in a young player on the ice. All those characteristics, all in the fact that he nearly died a few years ago. And he's battled his way back from that. He is perfectly equipped to battle adversity because he has. And it just seems like he's scratching the surface of what he's going to be able to do at the NHL level. So I think that means that I'm probably a no on the trade Rossi front. But it's not my decision. It's not my call. That's for the GM to put together. Yeah, you're gonna want to make sure. I'm gonna say tomorrow Sunday night's show will be the best show that Locked On Wild has put out this year, bar none. So you're going to want to make sure to listen at 8 p.m. on Sunday night. Do not miss it. It's going to be the best show that you will listen to from this podcast, hands down. Marco Rossi flipped for Crosby in picks. I don't know. On one hand, it is Sidney Crosby, but I don't know. I'll ask Alex about that. I'll ask him about that on Monday. Does give you offense, and he does still have legs left for sure. He's a elite face-off center. Wins them in bunches. I think he's at 56% this year. And if you put him between Kaprizov and Zuccarello, that would be spicy. Just got home from the game. Would have been here sooner, but got stuck behind a dude going 53 and a 60. I think it was Trennan. Ooh. Zing from Anita, but not wrong. Should we acknowledge it or just not talk about it? Because I think the curse has been lifted. That particular player hasn't been completely useless over the last few games. I'm not going to acknowledge by name because I was worried already that I had broken the jinx. So we'll just see if said production continues at an acceptable level. I don't want to jinx it. I don't want to jinx it. How about Boldy with a nice draw on his last faceoff with Eck getting tossed off the dot, putting in work on defensive duties position-wise too. Yeah, Boldy has been, in addition to the offense, like let's just talk about his defensive numbers here for a second because I think they continue to trend pretty good. I'm just going to go by point shares because I think that's the easiest way to kind of determine who has the most value defensively for this team right now. And point shares are right here. So defensively, Matt Boldy is 7th on the team in defensive point shares with 1.4 in 22 games. But how about Kirill Kaprizov? I don't think we talk about Kirill's defense enough. Yeah, it's not shutdown level, but he has the highest defensive point shares amongst forwards, even higher than Joel Eriksson Ek. He's got 1.7 defensive point shares so far this season in 21 games. And his adjusted performance, 52 goals, 77 points, 77 assists, 129 points. That's his projected pace. Matt Boldy's on pace for 85 points and 41 goals. Those two have been just a wrecking ball so far this season. Just going nuts. Yeah, this is a good point about Rossi. You're selling the future for instant gratification. If you go for Crosby and it's at the deadline, then draft picks for him. I fully agree. I think if you're going to go get somebody for a rental for this season, you use picks or use prospects that you know are far enough away that they're not. Because this is the other thing, too, that I think we need to keep in mind is that not every prospect is going to pan out. And as good of a job as Judd Brackett has done in accumulating draft talent, not all those guys are going to make it to this roster. But that's why it's so important to identify the ones that can and to use the ones that won't while they are still tradable assets to get what you need. It's a numbers game. All of those prospects they're just not going to make the NHL roster. Some of those guys are going to fizzle because every single individual person is different, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what your. It doesn't matter, where you fit in the scheme. Sometimes it just isn't the right scheme for you. Everybody's different. Too perfect with both Billy and Flower. I think Crosby would be a great trade. I mean, don't put it past him because they clearly have history. I'm of the belief, I do think Bill Guerin needs to do something to try to help facilitate this and to further this. Just do something. We'll deal with the particulars as long as it's not Marco Rossi. We'll deal with the particulars after it happens. point made on Rossi. He's just developing, and in a couple years, he's likely going to make the Wild look like fools for trading him. Yeah, there's a lot of no to. Well, this is a good question. Why do I still dislike Merrill, even though he has been playing like a real defenseman this year? Is my dislike misplaced? I'm kind of in the same boat. Like, where are the defensive point shares at? Oh boy. That's not this year, is it? Yes, it is. Where is it's because they Merrill has been worth just under 1 defensive point share this year. I think the biggest thing for that third pairing is that they just have not been the crater that they were over the last couple of years. It hasn't been a position that's been exploited by opponents like in previous seasons. Because I'm kind of in the same boat. You just keep tuning in, expecting for something to go wrong, and it just never does. Like, I couldn't tell you the last time that Merrill was on the ice for a goal against. Now, maybe that's just me kind of lazy mathing it, but I couldn't tell you the last time he was on the ice for a goal against. And if he's not giving up goals against, he's doing his job. As much as you'd like to see a prospect go in there, this is a Wild team that is really, they're right in the thick of the playoff chase. They continue to win, and unless they really fall apart, then they're going to just continue to do their thing until changes are warranted. And at this point, even with like what are the key issues for this team right now in terms of things that just aren't hitting their mark would be Yakov Trenin, although let's throw this out there because I don't think a lot of people knew this. We expected that maybe Trenin would have a few more points than he has. But Russo said something the other day that Trenin is one of the hardest forwards to get shots against in the entire NHL. Like, him and Marcus Foligno are amongst the leaders in the entire NHL in goals against and just general shots and opportunities against. Like, this team collectively is just not allowing their opponents to do anything offensively. And that shouldn't be a surprise because if we look at the standings in the NHL, where did I put that tab now? If we look at the standings in the NHL right now, the Minnesota Wild have given up 56 goals, which is tied with Dallas and Winnipeg for the fewest in the entire league. The 56 goals allowed is the fewest in the entire NHL. How about that? Got to be doing something right. And again, the plus 18, the goal differential, which is a pretty good indicator of kind of where you're at as a team. The Wild have the second best goal differential in the Western Conference. There are a couple of teams that have a plus 30 right now in the East, but they're second to Winnipeg in that too. Fewest, as Britt points out, fewest regulation losses in the NHL. The team is doing something right. And I think, to Britt's point, I think the reason that the trade discussion gets brought up is bringing something in to help with those areas that need some help. Top 6 scoring is the one that I identify the most because you have the, like, let's just look at kind of where we're at. Number one defense in the NHL. And from a goaltending perspective, the goalie play is like top 3 in the league. If you could get the 5-on-5 scoring for the Minnesota Wild into the top 10, and it's crazy because I'm pretty sure when I did the stats 20 games in, I'm pretty sure the Minnesota Wild are like 11th in 5-on-5 goals per game right now. So they're right there. And if you add a piece, like if you add a big piece to your top 6 that can help with 5-on-5 scoring in particular, like you can turn this into a team that can go toe to toe with Winnipeg and win games, or beat Dallas. Like that's, I think, the thing that this Wild team needs to be able to turn the tide against those two teams is just a little boost in scoring. You know, you're going to get Matt Zuccarello back at some point, hopefully. I don't even want to speculate considering the injury, because I would if that would have happened to me, I would be doing shows from bed. Like I would not have gotten out of bed yet. And that happened 3 weeks ago? 2 weeks ago? I would not have gotten out of bed. So I don't want to even speculate as to a return for Zuccarello, because imagine just moving around with that type of an injury, let alone getting on the ice and skating or shooting a puck. I don't know how hockey players do it sometimes. Just road warriors. But this is why we talk about making a trade, is not necessarily like blowing something up. It's trying to reinforce what you have. And it's sending a message to your players. Like, we know it would be the same thing as Bill Guerin calling a meeting for the team and saying, I know you guys are doing very, very well. I'm going to go out and get you a little help. And that sends a message too that kind of amps up your team. Like, hey, Billy thinks that we've got a chance to do it this year. Like that's kind of reinforcing that message of all this work that the team has put in. Management is buying into what they're selling and is going to go get them somebody that can help get them just that little bit more over the top. Yeah, I love when people throw stuff like this out in the chat, Britt, so that I can just kind of elaborate on it, because you know we hear about trades, and especially with the fact that Rossi's been linked so much, you hear about trades, and you just immediately think like, oh boy, here we go. Like, it's just not satisfied or whatever. But in this case, I view it strictly as like trying to further the good work that this team has done so far this season. Who would be the best player to bring in to help better round off this team, help on the power play and 5-on-5 scoring? My top contender, especially now, because little standings update, the New York Islanders are now in 7th place in the Metropolitan Division, and they are 3-4-3 in their last 10 games. I am of the belief, and I'm pulling up his numbers now so that I can see if this is in fact accurate. I'm still of the belief that I think Brock Nelson would be a hell of an ad for this Wild team. And Denny's talked about that quite a bit as well. Denny, in fact, I think beat me to it. I think Brock Nelson would be a fantastic ad for this Minnesota Wild team because he's a definite top 6. There's no question as to him being a top 6 guy. He definitely is. And let me just see. I don't even know what I'm looking for necessarily. Okay, so Brock Nelson has an expected goals right now of 8.6. He has scored 10 goals and has 17 total points. And, I see like Dan pointing out Matt Barzal. Look, Barzal's a good player, but the thing that is tricky here is if you're the Minnesota Wild, with the plans that you have in the offseason, unless Brock Nelson were to say, hey, I want to stay, I want to sign like a 2 or a 3 year deal to stay, then at that point, maybe you look at that. But he is an impending free agent, so you could add him at a rental price. The New York Islanders are going to have to go into a full rebuild. They are gross, they're old, they are slow, they are horrendously bad at a lot of different things. They're going to have to make some sort of a big move. This is where the Wild could come in because you have a big prospect pool. You've got a lot of picks too. This is another reason that the Wild have as many picks as they do in 2026. They have 2 thirds, 2 fourths, 2 fifths, and I think 2 sixth round picks in 2026. So that's where you can use some of those. You throw in maybe a prospect. But the other thing on Matt Barzal is he's currently on long-term injured reserve, and he's signed for $9.15 million every season until 2031. I don't necessarily want to deal with messy money, and I don't mean messy money in a negative way, but $9.15 million isn't a contract that you can just easily integrate into your cap. So I would lean Brock Nelson because he's an impending free agent. He has 10 goals on the season. Let me look at some of his other stats just to see kind of where he's at with his other marks this season. So 10 goals, 17 points. He's got 73 shots on goal in 23 games. Playing just under 19 minutes on the ice per night. He's winning faceoffs at a 55.9% clip. He has 1 power play goal. So a lot of his production is even strength. So he would certainly help with 5-on-5. But here's the other thing. The versatility that you bring in. He could play center. He could play wing. John Hines has shown that he's not afraid to use guys who aren't tried and true centers to win faceoffs. Case in point, Matt Boldy. You could do that with Brock Nelson. You could easily do that with Brock Nelson. Have him play wing, but then have him take faceoffs. And he's a big frame too. 6'4", 210. I think that would be appealing. The rumored return that we looked at, I think we talked about this with Alex on Monday, was a first and a third in 2025. If you think he could put you over the top, it's worth the price. I'm not scared of that in the slightest, because you still have a second round pick. Maybe you have to make another move in order to make the money work, to where you get a pick coming back. I'm not great. I'm not great with trade returns, but I'm not scared off by that price in the slightest. Patrick Waugh and Lou are having a power struggle on the island. Could be a good time to fleece them and get Nelson or Anders Lee or Bo Horvat. Lee wouldn't be as bad. He's signed next year for $7 million. But Horvat is signed for 8.5 every season until 2031. So that just gets to be a lot of money. I'm gonna say it again. It's messy money. Not that what happened here? Not that Horvat wouldn't be a good player, but it's a lot of money that you have to. I would much rather just wait for super long-term contracts until after Kaprizov's back on the books. Don't we get the money back soon for Suter and Parise? Yeah, after this current season, the buyouts reset to a combined $1.88888888 million. So all that money is freed up. Some of it has been used, but the bigger key thing, I like how I point at the screen when I'm trying to make an important point. The bigger thing to keep in mind is going to be this rumored salary cap hike. There's supposed to be a big hike in the salary cap from 88 to like $96 million. That's where you can fit somebody in on the books, like a big time name. That's where you could fit them in. Brock Nelson is currently 33, and Denny is 100% correct here. He's 6'4", very good in front of the net, bodes well for the playoffs. So you can have him be the net front guy instead of having to have Jared Spurgeon do that. And guess what? The other side of the coin, Brock Nelson is currently has currently accumulated 1.5 point shares on defense. So he's not just an offensive guy. He's a good face-off guy. He is he's good defensively. He is on pace. His adjusted goals for this year are 35. He's on pace for 35 goals. He has gotten to 35 or 36 goals, or I guess last year he had 33, but he's gotten to over 30 goals like clockwork for the last 4 seasons. I'm really high on this, if you can't tell. I think it'd be a great ad. I think it'd be a savvy ad, and I think it would give John Hines another wrinkle to his lineup maneuvering. Because think about the things that you could do late in games. Like you could go Kaprizov, Nelson, Zuccarello, Kaprizov, Eriksson, Nelson, Kaprizov, Boldy, Nelson, Kaprizov, Boldy, Zuccarello. John Hines has infinite opportunities to just tinker late in games. You add players that bring versatility and you just figure it out as you go. I think it'd be great, but there's a lot of season between now and the trade deadline. So things can go, like they could continue to just go on an absolute run, and to further the need for it, there's a lot that can happen between now and then. Salary retention, third team broker, it can happen. Billy can get creative if he thinks the boys are for real this year, and I got to feel like he does. Guerin hasn't said much during the season, but the last thing that he said was it's a good start, but they got to further it. I think this team took what happened last year and they took it personal. And they just continue to get it done. Here's a nugget from Russo. According to Money Puck, entering today's game, Minnesota Wild captain Jared Spurgeon leads the NHL, giving up just 1.62 expected goals per 60 minutes, with him on the ice at 5-on-5 play. That's not bad at all. Denny, that is elite level defense by the captain. Really nice. Does anybody know how much cap the Wild have towards the deadline? It is a fluctuating number. I'll try to explain this as best I can because I'm still learning it myself. Cap space accumulates on a daily basis, which is why you see the Wild make so many roster moves, is because days when they don't play, if they have a couple of players off of the active roster, then they accumulate that cap space. And it wouldn't surprise me if they really start to try to further that because according to Puckpedia, if the Wild don't make any moves between now and the trade deadline, they'll have $1.5 million of deadline cap space. But if they start to accumulate, like when they had I think 20, when they had 21 on the roster for like a week, all of a sudden that deadline cap space got up to like 10 mil. So it's just about, maneuvering those days where you don't have games to add in that cap space. And there will be teams that'll broker deals. This again could be another opportunity where a 2026 draft pick comes into play. And you throw a team a 2026 fifth round pick to retain 25%, 50%. Like the Wild did when they weren't in the playoffs or when they had just a crazy amount of cash. Those kinds of things happen. Let's give a nice round of applause to Denny for his show. Denny's being modest. It's Denny's Sunday shows have reached the 10,000 views mark in 19 shows, which I believe is one of the fastest shows to ever do it in the history of YouTube hockey. That's Denny. It's the content that Denny brings, the opinions that Denny brings. People are tuning in, and it's rightfully so. So big applause to all of you for tuning in every Sunday and tuning into the shows, because you are the reasons that Denny has been able to achieve the success that his show has achieved so far. Without the listeners, without the Locked On Wild community, he doesn't hit those numbers plateaus. So big round of applause. Congratulations to Denny on the off and running success that his show has achieved so far. What was I looking for? I had something that I was trying to find, and I don't remember what it was. So we were talking about Brock Nelson. I hope the Wild can save him. Oh, that's what it was. Thank you, Keith, for jogging my memory. It was, it's all about just if you have off days between games, to send players down and to utilize that extra cap space to be able to do something. I feel like the Wild are going to make a move. Britt is right on here. If the team can stay healthy and low on injuries, definitely have a true run this year. This is the team I think can do it. It's built off of the defense. It's built off the goaltending, and they just need a little help offensively, and they can go up against anybody. Special teams needs a boost, but they can do it. It's just a matter of getting a little help. But I think that is going to wrap it up for tonight's Locked On Wild postcast. We went a little long here tonight, but it's easy to do that when the team continues to win and continues to just rack up the points. They just continue to find ways to win games. It's not always pretty. It's not going to be the flashiest most nights or some of the nights. I don't know about most nights, but that's how hockey teams do it. Is some teams go with flash and sizzle, and other teams just put their heads down and just get it done. So good work by the Wild here. And now everybody can go do their Black Friday shopping. And I'm going to kick my feet up until tomorrow night's game against the Nashville Predators. Or at least, no, I'm not going to make the joke because I don't want to jinx the game. Oh, ick. What a weird score. San Jose's beating Seattle 7-5 in the third period. That's gross. How did Nashville do? Oh, Nashville lost in overtime 3-2 to the Tampa Bay Lightning. Sorry about that. So the Predators on tap tomorrow. We'll do a little preview of some sort for you, and we'll have you covered throughout the game as well. So appreciate everybody tuning in as always. Make sure to hit that like button so you don't miss out on any new episodes throughout the week. Locked On Wild has you covered every Monday through Friday as part of the Locked On Podcast Network.